Good afternoon. Welcome to Christianity Out Loud from the car again. Done a few of these, time permitting, so another video from the car on the way home. Hey, it's been a while, just work, really. So, I was thinking today, September the 12th over here in Australia, which is not a date that seems to be of any relevance really to anybody, except of course it is September 11th over in the US, and 22 years on we still remember those events that occupied our TV screens for, well, seemingly all day, and then the subsequent events that followed on, and wars and battles and conflicts and ideologies and political unrest and instability and all manner of things that followed since. I found it really funny, not in a ha-ha sense, that President Biden didn't seem to make it to a memorial in New York, and I believe, if my memory is correct, that he's the first US president not to attend a memorial since those events. Make of that what you will. Hopefully he wasn't on a beach as he was with fires in Hawaii the other day. But anyway, that train of thought somehow led me to school chaplains here in Australia, particularly Queensland. Don't ask me how that segue worked in my mind, because I can't tell you. All I can tell you is that that's where my mind went for some reason. I have no, I don't know, it just did. That was the segue. Which then I noticed a post by the local federal member for Petrie, which is the electorate I live in federally. He had a post on his social medias praising the work that school chaplains have done and continue to do in our schools here I'll keep it in Queensland, because that's the state in which I live, so it's the state that's most relevant to my thoughts here. And yeah, he listed off all of the good things and the good works that these chaplains do for the students in their particular schools. You know, simple things from mundane things like providing breakfast or lunches or meals for children who don't get them at home, to any sort of emotional, psychological support, working through any issues there. Of course, such is the nature of the role. Yes, it is a religious role. It is run by Scripture Union, but they are not ministers, they are not preachers, so what they don't do, excuse me, is espouse any sort of faith-filled content, by virtue of them not being allowed to start with, but also it's not a part of their role. They are a support, not a ministerial role. Which of course they do wonderful things. And I was at a chaplaincy fundraiser the other night here, and one of the other people at that dinner told a story of a local state school in my area. A state school, if you're listening from overseas, a state school would be an elementary school, I guess you would call them, or a primary school, which tends to be kindergarten to grade 6 here in Australia. And he told the story of how that school that he was at didn't have a chaplain appointed to them, and they didn't have a great reputation within the community, and justifiably so. Only had just over 200 students enrolled, and we're looking at fairly significant cuts across the board. They appointed a chaplain who introduced a few programs, and not a few years later they're at well over 600 students and have won awards for the programs that they have, and they are known not just locally but known really within the wider Brisbane area as one of the best state schools or elementary schools, if you wish to call them that. And all of those changes arose simply because a chaplain was allocated to that school. So really does show what can happen if you let God work. But the sad part about chaplaincy here has got nothing to do with the job that they do. It's got nothing to do with any restrictions they have on preaching the good news of Jesus Christ or anything like that. What is sad, and I find utterly disheartening, and I really don't know what I can do about it, is that their income or their salary, they have to fundraise themselves. So they are out and about speaking at churches, local churches. They're out and about advertising and talking to local businesses to drum up donations to allow themselves to stay at these schools where they are so desperately needed, as evidenced by the countless examples of where a chaplain has not just turned around a student but managed to turn around an entire school community. And I just find the fact that they have to fundraise themselves in order to keep themselves employed, as I said, I just find that really sad. I have two good friends who are chaplains in areas here, and to see them really having to focus a lot of their energy and their time and their own resources on the creation of their resources financially to allow them to keep doing that work is again very disheartening, as everybody would be fully aware that those of us who don't have to go around and seek to fundraise for our own salaries, and to keep our mortgages paid, keep our lights on and food on our table and our children fed and clothed. Those of us who don't have to spend a lot of time and energy and effort doing that, we are able to pour so much more into our own jobs. And this is not even like they're running a small business where you could say, oh, you just sell a better product. Not quite really how it works here in this situation. And one of these chaplains, one of my friends, told me only on Sunday that now any donations that come to them are no longer considered tax deductible. So we don't really know what that looks like, if that's indeed the case. I'm not saying that she had it wrong, but I don't know. I haven't looked into that for myself, as I wave cars in front of me here. I haven't looked into that myself, so I don't know. But I would just find that even more disheartening to see that donations made to an organisation, to a non-profit, the organisation that runs these chaplains, that trains them up, that equips them. Scripture Union is a non-profit. They are not a for-profit entity. They are not after making money for themselves. They are a non-profit. Yes, they have bills to pay. Yes, they have salaries to pay. But they don't have shareholders and stakeholders. Not stakeholders. They don't have shareholders to satisfy. They don't have dividends to pay out. They don't have anything like that. They don't have investors to satisfy. That's not how that works. So they are a non-profit, and now donations to them are not considered tax deductible. And while it's sad, I don't find that, it's probably even sadder that I don't find that surprising. Despite lip service from various levels of political party here in Queensland and Australia for that matter, stating that chaplaincy is supported. Okay. It is unfortunate that no. It seems that other government, what would you say, other government departments, shall we say, like the police, like the defence, like ambulance, like other emergency services, these departments have chaplains, and they are paid a government salary, they are paid a wage as a part of the structure of the organisation. And they're there for a very obvious reason. They're there to support people through difficult circumstances and difficult times. If you think of just how difficult the job of a police officer is, let's set aside what we may or may not think of police corporately and what we think of them as a group or as a collective across the last 3 years or so, enforcing ridiculous mandates and lockdown measures and arresting pregnant women. That only really occurred in Victoria, which should come as a surprise to nobody anywhere. Setting aside those feelings, how difficult a job the police actually is, how difficult a job they have. Let's go to the scene of a car crash and have to go and inform the family of a victim that they've passed away. That's not easy. Who do they talk to about those sorts of questions and how to deal with it? That's why the police employs chaplains. That's why the Defence Service employs chaplains. I know a retired Navy chaplain. That's what he did. But for some reason, in schools, they're not. So in education, they're not just like a teacher. They're not just like a counsellor. We don't have guidance officers, counsellors, teachers, teacher aides, and chaplains employed as part of Education Queensland. Say, here in Queensland, we have the others, but we don't have chaplains. We only have what Scripture Union can provide and the funds that they can raise in order to work as many days as the funds allow. I think it's $12,000 to keep a chaplain in a school for 1 day per year. So 2 days, 24, 3 days, 36,000. See, they're not being paid anywhere near what a teacher or a guidance officer is paid, and I'm not suggesting necessarily that they should be. But you can see the sort of numbers of how difficult it is to raise $60,000 across a year from churches and businesses and individuals. How much work goes into just that, just to keep yourself out of school. And let's consider the hours that they work at the school. If they're there providing breakfast for students who don't have breakfast at home, well, that's often a 6:30 or a 7 o'clock start. If they're running after school programs, that is often a later finish. And the content just the content that they're having to deal with. Students or children that are from domestic violence, children that are from separated families, children that are suffering, experiencing friendship issues, struggling with identity, you name it. These are not light subject areas, light areas of conversation that these chaplains are dealing with. And I do know from experience, having been in and around this for some time, that oftentimes students will prefer to go to a chaplain because a chaplain, believe it or not, has no agenda. That they are there just to listen and just be a support for these children. That is what they are there to do. They don't have KPIs to meet. They don't have boxes to tick. They don't have these reports to fill out and say, yes, I've met with my quota of 25 students for the week and I've directed them into this pathway and that pathway and whatever else. They don't have that. They're there as an ear, as a friend, as a shoulder to cry on. And they have to go and do all of that and raise their own salaries. It's difficult. It's very difficult. So I'm going to put a link in the description below. And I'm going to put that all over all of my socials. If you're so inclined, have a look at this wonderful person who's taken on such a noble calling on her life to go and be a chaplain in one of the most difficult state high schools. Again, if I could know the American terminology, I would tell you. I got elementary for primary. You'll forgive me for junior and senior high, maybe that's what they're called. Secondary schools here in Australia. She's at one of the roughest secondary schools, the most difficult environments there is. And she's there as this friend, this ear, this confidant, this shoulder to cry on, this support that has no agenda. And that's the same for chaplains all over Queensland. And schools are crying out for them. Schools are crying out for them. So I'm going to be donating to this cause, and I would encourage you to do the same. Even if you don't know her, please understand the good work that she is doing. Understand why she is doing it. Please understand that she also cannot do it without my help. She cannot do it without your help. And if we don't step up and help these chaplains, then I don't know who will. And these programs just will unfortunately not run. And maybe petition, if you're in Australia here, petition your local minister, your local member of parliament, state and federal, and perhaps start asking some questions of them as to why some government departments employ chaplains, which is a strictly religious job, has a inherent religious requirement in the job description, yet that can't happen in schools. Maybe start asking those questions, because that is actually what I intend to do as well. And it's all very good to promote a rainbow agenda. It's all very good as some school counsellor to hide all of information regarding gender identity and things of that nature from their parents. But it's only the chaplain that's going to actually tell them the truth. It's only the chaplain who's going to be the genuine support for somebody going through those difficulties and those struggles. And if you think about it, we are living in the age of equality, diversity. We all know that that means one thing and one thing only. Not true diversity, not true inclusion. We know what that means. But nonetheless, I think there's a compelling argument to be made that if, say, the police have a religious requirement on a position such as a chaplain or the defence, then surely the government entity like Education Queensland would have similar positions available, so that these wonderful people who have a greater calling upon their life than I do, that serve a far greater purpose in their careers than I imagine I ever will, so that they don't actually have to go and spend half their time trying to fundraise and pay their own salaries just so they can keep doing the work that is so desperately needed here in our schools. So the link will be in the description below. Go and donate. Go and help as best you can. That's my encouragement. And until next time, God bless.